Well, hello there. I had the grace growing up, and I don't know if everybody else has had this grace, but I got to know all four of my grandparents. How about yourself? For me, it was a blessing because I was kind of in the older echelon of the grandchildren to meet my and to get to know my mom's parents, Pop Pop and Nanny. Pop Pop was this Irish, smiling, engaging, hilarious grandfather, and Nanny, this warm, smiling, amazing cook. And then on my dad's side, my dear grandmother's still alive, my grandmother Donahue. She's grace incarnate. And then my dear grandfather died a couple of years ago, but my dear grandy, passionate for life, goal of life is to get to heaven. And I think back to that relationship and those connections, and what a blessing that is to be able to experience their lives, their wisdom, and most importantly, their unconditional love for me as a grandson. Today, as we film this, it's feast presentation of the Lord in the temple. It's 40 days after Christmas. And you can't help but to see how God's providence would have Mary and Joseph bring baby Jesus, 40 years old, to a temple in which two seniors would receive them, Simeon and Anna. And these faithful elderly people who were wise and faithful and rooted in faith received Jesus. And so today it's good for us to hear these scriptures again. So if we just enter into this prayerful contemplation of that moment when baby Jesus was presented to these two wonderful seniors. Now there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon. This man was righteous and devout, awaiting the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was upon him. It had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he should not die before he had seen Christ the Lord. He came in the spirit of the temple, and when the parents brought in the child Jesus to perform the custom of the law in regard to him, he took him into his arms and blessed God, saying, "Now, Master, you may let your servant go in peace, according to your word. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you've prepared in the sight of all the peoples, a light for the revelation to the Gentiles, and the glory of your people Israel." The child's father and mother were amazed at what they had said about him. And aren't you always amazed what grandparents say? They are just so incredible at how amazing they are at accepting their grandchildren, loving their grandchildren. And today we get to just dive into the role that seniors play in our lives, how we can care for them, love them, cherish them, recognize that in their retirement, they haven't really retired. They just graduated to a new style of loving us and caring for us. And as a priest, both myself and I think all of our priests in the great grouping, we probably spend more time caring and loving and being able to visit with our seniors than any other apostolate that we do. First and foremost, because most of our sacraments, the seniors are the majority of people present. Secondly, because so many times we get to go visit and personally spend time in the homes with our seniors here. And then thirdly, obviously the care for and the whole funeral rites that we get to do so frequently in our great grouping. And so I thought it was very important to highlight one of the ministries in our great grouping that's reaching out, friends of seniors, and its leader. His name is Steve Osborne. He's somebody who has a heart for our seniors. He's got heads up for all those who are, especially now, going through this awful Corona season time in which so many of our seniors are quarantined. He's a former U.S. air pilot, so he knows how to make friendly skies even when they're not friendly. He is from the gambling state of Nevada, but he bet his life on his dear wife, Janine. His motto of life is what you make it, with God's help. So please welcome to the program, Steve Osborne. Steve, how'd you get that motto? That's a pretty cool motto.
Thank you. First of all, thanks, Father Jay, for this opportunity to really highlight what my ministry members do. It's a great way to honor them and to honor the seniors they serve, and hopefully share some information that might be passed on to the seniors during this interview to help them. But I got that motto from my experience at the Air Force Academy. It was one of the most challenging times of my life. In my first semester, I found myself failing due to the academic, military requirements. It was a combination of military, athletic, academic, very demanding, very challenging. Found myself failing after the first semester. So I started going to church and attending Mass on Sundays, where I found an amazing power from the power of prayer. And I don't think I could have ever made it through that semester. I actually finished that year on the honor roll, and I attribute that to the power of God and the power of prayer. And that's became my motto through my entire time at the Air Force Academy. It's actually engraved in the saber that was awarded to me when I graduated from the academy. And on the back it says, "With God's help, life is what you make it." So, because I
Yeah,
could have
that is
never
so
done
true. That when you hit tough times, it's one thing to say, "Okay, I'm going to white knuckle through it," but it really is reaching out to our Creator, our Redeemer, and the person who loves us the most, our God and Jesus Christ, right? And it's through His help that we can both help ourselves and those around us, right?
Yes, and like I said, there's been many times in my life, and one thing I have to say that God is always there. You just have to ask Him, and I think you've said that before. Part of your homilies also. Now, if you don't ask Him, but He's going to be there anyway. But if you ask Him, He will answer your prayers.
Yeah, I found that the greatest thing of life, and I think it's what you experienced in several times of your life, is to know that He is here. So it's not necessarily about doing something. It's being aware that your Creator, your God, Jesus Christ, is here. And when we recognize that, I don't know. It's just as if, okay, I can get through this because He's here. Like, Jesus is next to me. Is there power? Like, what's more powerful than that? You know, like, bring on Tom Brady, the GOAT of the world. Who cares? You know, it's like, I got Jesus. You know, it's or whatever it is. You know, so there's all kinds of great, powerful sources out there of winning and doing things, but there can't be. Speaking of something powerful, though, you piloted airplanes. What's it like to be a pilot? Because, like, from the passenger's perspective, the only thing we hear about the pilot saying is we're at 30,000 feet and there's some really neat battlefield down below that nobody can see. And that's like the only time we check in with you. Are you guys just kind of scanning the ground when you're flying? Or are you actually flying? What's life like flying?
That's a great picture right there. That's called Back in the Berg. That's a limited print that my friend had made, and you can see it's flying back into Pittsburgh in a Boeing 737. And to answer your question, a lot of times nowadays, 90% of the time, the plane is on autopilot. So we're just basically programming the computer. I'd say maybe 10% of the time we actually hand fly the airplane anymore. So we're monitoring our flight path. We try to be tour guides. I always point out there's a Heinz Stadium on the right as we turn into our final approach into Pittsburgh. So I always be sure to point out there's the three rivers and how they got their name, you know, Allegheny, Monongahela, and the Ohio River all join at the three rivers. That's why they call it three rivers. That was always one of my points I pointed out while flying into Pittsburgh. And that airplane was the plane I actually flew, the Boeing 737.
Do you ever have any scary moments where you're like, you really do need to rely on your motto of God's help because otherwise, yikers?
There's only one time that I ever felt close to say crashing or dying. And that was when I was in the Air Force flying out of Anchorage, Alaska, going to Japan. We were maxed out. It was a very long flight. Our fuel load was maximized. Our gross weight was maximized, 325,000 pound, 4-engine jet airplane taking off out of Anchorage. And all of a sudden I found myself sinking towards the ground with no apparent reason. This was before they knew about microbursts and wind shear. So we're going back a ways, but now everybody knows about it and what causes microbursts and what causes that to happen to planes. They actually have detectors at airports now called Doppler radar that can prevent you from entering that situation. But at that point, there was nothing that told you about it. So essentially what happened, I entered a downdraft or microburst. It started pushing me towards the water. So I'm sinking about 1,000 feet per minute, just a couple thousand feet above the ground. When I penetrated it, I got on the backside of it. And essentially what a microburst is, downdrafts. When you enter it, it first increases your performance. Then you get the downdraft pushing you down, which I was in at that point. And then you get the decrease in performance when you get a tailwind, which is even more catastrophic because now you have no performance at all. So again, just praying to God and saying, get me through this, and using intuition, I was able to penetrate the wind shear and made it out of it. That's the only time my whole that was over 35 years ago, that I ever felt close to coming to crashing or coming to the end. And nowadays, again, there's things to prevent that from happening. Thank God. So technology has really advanced to help prevent that type of thing from happening. But
now, flying's kind of in your DNA, right? Did your dad fly? Is that how you got in your mind to fly?
No, my dad was just a quick history of my mother was visiting from Australia, England, and I met my dad, who was stationed in the Air Force in England at the time. He was enlisted. He fell in love, got married, came back to Reno, Nevada, where he was stationed at Stitt Air Force Base. That was a fighter mountain survival base at the time. It's now the site of the Reno Air Races. It's no longer an Air Force base. But anyway, during that time, they had my brother, Bobby, who was 5 years older than me, my sister, who was 5 years younger, and me. And they're 5 years old. Just to kind of give you a quick recap, my parents got divorced. 6 years old, I witnessed my brother drown right around Christmas time. He jumped in the river, flooding Truckee River, to save his dog, who was being washed away in a raging rapids. And at that point, I have to say, maybe question why God would allow something like that to happen. So that was probably a negative part of my first experience with God and my religious journey. And I kind of came to just realize at that point that death is a part of life. It's not a good part. It's God's will. God's will be done. We can't question it. And that's just what it's meant to be. That's what I've come to terms with over the years. But that's the history. When I went to college, my dad went to Vietnam, and my mother stayed in Reno until the hospital behind our house offered to buy her house. And my house I grew up in is now a helipad. So she took the money, moved back to Australia, and lived happily ever after. Now there's a beautiful home in Australia, and took my sister with her at the time. And my sister finished her school there, became a lawyer, and married another lawyer, and has 2 children of her own. And I visit them quite regularly, and they were visiting quite regularly until COVID. So part of, I get, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, but your dad did have, he was at the Air Force and flew as well as you, right?
He never flew as a pilot,
Okay.
but he was an enlisted man, which he was actually in what do they call him? More administrator. He was in government, writing government contracts and that type. But he was a big inspiration for me going to the academy. He always encouraged me to go to the academy and fly. He always wanted me to be an astronaut, which at one point I did have an aspiration to do that, but not as easy as it sounds.
Right. Oh, I could imagine. Now, growing up in your family, your background was not Catholic. What was that like? Was it more of a Baptist type of faith, or what was your grade school and high school faith background like?
Well, I was baptized as Protestant, but never really had any formal religious education or training. During my years in junior high and high school, I joined a couple Bible groups with my friends. Again, from that, as a young man, you're always questioning God and what's religion all about. And again, part of my religious journey at that point was saying, just rationalizing that, hey, as long as you're a good person, you're going to go to heaven. That's what the 10 Commandments boil down to. And it's an easy simplification. But again, thy will be done, and be a good person, you're going to go to heaven. That was how I got through my high school years, just with that motto, until I went to college, which I told you about. My journey at that point became a little bit more serious. And again, baptized as Protestant, but if you want, I can tell you how I transitioned to Catholic after that point, but I don't know if you want to go there yet. But
yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But before you did, were you also dabbling in Mormonism and Buddhism as well?
Well, I during my experience in my Air Force years around the country and the world, I've encountered Mormons who tried to convert me. They were my friends, and they told me about the Book of Mormon and the Book of Latter-day Saints and how Jesus revealed himself in modern times. And I'm sure you're familiar with it. But, they raised a lot of good questions, like, well, hey, maybe Jesus would come back in later days. But, a lot of it didn't make sense to me, though. However, they were really good people. I have to say that. They really took care of each other, very family oriented. So, yeah, I considered them, and they tried to convert me. But at that point, I had no interest in really becoming any particular faith. But my experience with Buddhism was just what I studied. I respected a lot what they had to say. But again, I read a book while flying around the world. And again, this is part of my transitioning to my philosophy in the military. It was called The Religions of Man, and it explored all the different religions: Buddhism, Hinduism, Muslim. And from that, I just resigned the same thing. They all boiled down to the same thing. 10 Commandments. If you're a good person, you're going to go to heaven. It was not really until I met my wife, Janine, who was a devout Catholic, who really inspired me and taught me that there's a lot more to religion than just being a good person. You're going to go to heaven. So she was really my initial inspiration for wanting to become Catholic. But
now, how did you meet her? Was that a story in and of itself?
Yes, we met on a trip one time. We both hit it off. There's a little magic there, but we were both dating someone else. So we said, oh, well, we like each other, but see you later. Nice meeting you. Ran into each other another time, a local place we would go, the Ground Round, where pilots being notoriously cheap. And at that time, you go to the Ground Round on Monday nights where you get all you could eat wings. And then, of course, the flight attendants would come to join us. And then so you buy one beer and have like 2 pounds of wings for $5. 50 people eat. Anyway, that's where I met her. She had just completed her taxes with a girlfriend. I was with my friend. We met. We had both split up with our respective partners, and it was just magic.
What was Janine's career background?
Basically, just a flight attendant. I mean, she was a flight attendant at the time when I met her, and that's all. Her background.
Was she at U.S. Airways as well, or were you guys at different companies?
Yes, U.S. Airways. And actually, like I said, that's when we met, flying a trip for U.S. Airways. And we just hit it off. The one thing that really attracted me to Janine was her devotion to her faith and to her family. And that really made her stand out from the other women that I dated. She really seemed to have values and a devotion to her faith, which I didn't quite understand at that point, but developed a love for the Catholic faith over the years, which I can probably describe later on. But
now, Janine is from Pittsburgh, is that right? Is that
yes,
how you guys moved to Pittsburgh eventually through that influence?
Yes.
And what kind of background in the faith did she have? Was this something that spontaneously developed in her life, or was this rooted in a relationship like with her parents and a family, or what would you say is a bit of the history of her Catholicism that influenced yours?
She was raised Catholic ever since a little girl, attended all Catholic schools. So I don't think she knows anything else other than being a Catholic, but she just adapted a love for the faith, and she's so devoted. She's my teacher. You know, she teaches me things like what the Mass was about today, and which you mentioned Simeon at the temple, and mentioned that. Like I said, every day she teaches me new things, which I mean, she's my teacher and I have to say my rock through all the hardships we've been through in our life. We've had a lot of good times in our life, beautiful times, but we've had some heartbreaking moments also, like the loss of her mom, my father, her father-in-law just passed last year. You knew my father-in-law. You used to give him communion at a green tree, and he used to speak so highly of you. That's why I knew you became.
In Pittsburgh, there's no hiding. Everything's connected here.
Yep.
I can't even commit an honest sin, but that's for another day. But you guys also went on a Peru trip. Wasn't that important too, doing the mission trips in terms of you and your development, your faith, and your relationship with your wife?
Yeah, to kind of, I guess, just step back just one step from when I met her. Again, I never really had any interest. I attended Catholic Mass for probably 20 years with her. I never really even considered converting to Catholic or any religion at that point. I was comfortable just attending Mass. And as you may have recalled from Tom Rooney's story, my son tragically passed at 18. Don't like to really go into the details other than it was so tragic. And just like Simeon told Mary, a sword will pierce your heart. Nobody knows what it's like to lose a child. And all I can say from that is that really started my journey towards Catholicism, because at that point, I'm wondering how could, again, going back to when my brother died when I was 6 years old, how could God allow that to happen? So it started getting me to question God and wondering how that he would allow that to happen. Well, again, Janine being my rock and my strength, tried to explain it, saying God needed our son, Andre. He took him. We will all meet again one day. That started us going. And then at that point, we attended, well, first of all, Father Mac and Sister Annie, you were going to ask me how they part of our life, visited our house, and they were so strong in that time of that sword piercing our heart. Like I said, no one knows what it's like unless you've lost a child. As Mary did.
So Father Mac is Father Joe McCaffrey, and Sister Annie, They were, Father Mac was the previous pastor at St. John and Paul Parish, and Sister Annie was the pastoral associate. So when your son passed, the two of them came to console you and your wife. Is that right?
Yes. And the peace they brought to our house was so indescribable. And that started our journey, I would say. They recommended going to a Griefshare program, which was also at St. John and Paul, where we met Owen Dwyer and Mary Beth Sweeney, who ran the program. Ironically, they got married after that because they had both lost a prior spouse, and they were members of that. But wonderful people, gave us strength, introduced us to a non-denominational program called Griefshare, and helped us deal with our son's death in the terms of why God does those things or why those things happen. And we should not question God, but accept it and just know that one day we'll be reunited through Jesus Christ with our loved ones. And that really helped us. That started our religious journey. And at that point, we went to Pope Francis was in town. I think Tom gave a brief description of that in his article. But Pope Francis was in Philadelphia. So Janine and I got on a flight looking for answers of why this could happen. And went there. He was speaking at the Independence Square. We did not have tickets. So we just took a chance and went down there. It was like a rock concert. People were scalping tickets.
That's in Philadelphia. Come on now. The Philadelphia would do anything.
I know. But we met these two older ladies who were wonderful. They go, "Hey, you're wearing I Love Pope Francis t-shirts. You deserve some tickets." So they just gave us tickets. So we were able to witness him in person in Independence Square. And he said a lot of things that were very inspirational. But one of the things that really struck a bell with me and rang home with Janine and I was he said, "Quit feeling sorry for yourself. Get out and help other people that are less fortunate." And at that point, Janine and I kind of made a commitment to do that. And when we came home, you asked me about Chimbote. First thing we did was sign up for the mission trip to Chimbote, which is sponsored by Bishop Zubik and the Catholic Diocese of Pittsburgh. And I'm not sure, I'm sure you are familiar with it, but I hope you don't mind if I use visual aids here.
No, not at all. Is that Pittsburgh Catholic?
What's that?
Is that the Pittsburgh Catholic?
Catholic faith.
Oh,
it's
sorry.
Catholic faith. Okay. But
and that was
anyway,
sorry, what was that a picture of? Do that again. What's that a picture of?
This is a picture of Sisters Lillian Bachman and Margaret Mary Birchmeyer, who are two nuns that in combination with Monsignor Roos started the Chimbote Maternidad, which is means maternity ward in Spanish, over 56 years ago. And they describe how they remind me of Mother Teresa. I mean, they're such saints. For 56 years, when they first started, they were delivering babies in a small room, darkened room, using a flashlight to deliver babies, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 a night. That developed into what's called the Maternidad, which is maternity ward in Spanish. And now they see over 1,000 people a day and attend to their medical needs, not just maternity ward needs, but just amazing people. So, like I said, we were motivated by that. Bishop Zubik actually went there on a mission himself, I think in 2009. So we went there, and from that experience changed our lives forever because we encountered people. There's another visual aid. I don't know if you can see it, but
Yep.
On the bottom of that is a picture of the barrios where we visited. You can see these are the homes that the people lived in. Some of them don't even have roofs. They have dirt floors. They're basically shacks, probably 10 feet by 10 feet. And the thing that inspired us the most was these people were happy. Their lives were simple and happy. And why? Because they had God. And where did they get God from? Because the Catholic Diocese of Pittsburgh brought the light to them. So that inspired us. So when we came back, we said, hey, what can we do to bring the light to less fortunate people? So when we got back, we heard of Senior Connection. We signed up for it. At that time, Senior Connection was being run by Mike Hines. And we found it very rewarding. Senior Connection was designed over, let's see, I don't know how many years ago. I think it was in 1988.
Mm-hmm. Sounds right.
And
We're going to
headed
put
by
up, I think we can put it up.
Father Albert.
Lee, do we have an image of that? No. Okay. Go ahead.
Anyway, it was started by Father Albert Semler, and ironically, Owen Dwyer, who I mentioned before, who ran the grief program at St. John and Paul's. Anyway, to summarize it, for all these years, Owen Dwyer used to run that program, and its intent was to help seniors to maintain their homes so that they could live in their homes that could not either financially or physically able to do their own repair work. So we found that to be very rewarding. During one of those trips, Mike Hines, who was running Senior Connection at that time, noticed that my wife Janine was bonding with a 93-year-old woman in Lawrenceville who we were doing a work project for. And they just hit it off. They chatted. We visited her. We would bring her Christmas presents. Mike Hines said, wouldn't it be nice if we made a more permanent connection? I mean, during Senior Connection, we'd see him once, maybe twice during the summer while we did work for him. But he noticed a lot of these seniors were lonely, had no social interaction whatsoever other than us doing jobs for them. So he asked me if I would start a sister program to Senior Connection called Friends for Seniors, where we would maintain a more permanent connection. And when I did start it, we basically set our goal to have our members call the seniors once a week as a minimum and visit them once a month. Now, obviously, COVID has restricted some of the visitations, depending on what people are comfortable with as far as social distancing, but the seniors still get phone calls from all our volunteers. And if you don't mind, this is a good segue to just, if you don't mind, just mention all the members in my ministry, because every one of them makes it what it is, and they bring the light to the seniors. And it will just be a minute if I could just mention their names, because they are what have made my ministry so successful. And
yeah, you definitely have a superstar team. It's an all-star cast. So yeah, who are they?
Here's the team.
Yeah, starting at linebacker.
And they all are all-stars. Barbara Bean, Michelle Bowles, Gail Buchek, Jeff Campbell, Mike Sinker, Mike Hines, Mary Fenzel, Jeff Herman, Allison Hertwick, Maureen Kazmerzik, Peggy Kelly, Kathy Late, Ann Lagoida, Marisa Macarelli, Janine Osborne, Teresa Payne, Daniel Perry, Joanne Phillips, Matthew Rogers, Chuck Sistini, Joe and Catherine Sherrick, Mary Beth Tomich, Sharon Connors, Patty Schaubel, Carol Horvatin, Alice Beeler, Rachel Verbanek, Donna Dobrzinski, and Joe Pyler. So thank you. I have to give credit to them because they are the ones that do all the work.
And that's what's so great about our community is that so many people, those names, and there's so many more who are constantly caring for their elderly or their own grandparents. And, it's interesting you make the connection between Pope Francis and Philadelphia, and that was one of the turning point moments for your own life. What you heard him say there was the following. Pope Francis said this at that particular site. He says, it shows us that like happiness, holiness is always tied to little gestures. Whoever gives you a cup of water in my name will not go unrewarded. These little gestures are those things we learn at home in the family, and they get lost amid all the other things we do. Yet we do make a difference each day. They are the quiet things done by mothers and grandmothers, fathers and grandfathers, by children. They are little signs of tenderness, affection, and compassion, like the warm supper we look forward to at night, the early lunch awaiting someone who gets up to go to work, homely gestures, like a blessing before we go to bed, a hug before we return from a hard day's work. Love is shown by little things, by attention to daily signs, which make us feel at home. Faith grows when it is lived and shaped by love. That is why our families, our homes, are true domestic churches. And I think that's the experience that has drawn you and so many heroic people in our parish and our communities. Wouldn't you say it's those little gestures?
Oh, definitely. Like I said, I just am amazed because, like I said, our minimum requirement is just to make a phone call. But the things I see our seniors do, I mean, I guess two of our members, Chuck Sistini is a retired optometrist who helps me run, there he is on the left right there,
Yeah.
who helps me run Senior Connection, and I couldn't do it without him. But he said one time, it just makes you feel good to know that you made someone's day a little bit brighter. And he does that he goes on his days off. He goes down and gives physicals and vision tests to people, homeless people on the street. That's what he does. He doesn't work in it. He's retired, but he does that on his own. He volunteers to do that in addition to what he does for our ministry. So we are very blessed to have him. Gail Buchik said another thing. She sees the face of God in every senior she serves. Wonderful people like that. I mean, the things they do for their seniors. Again, I just ask them to call, visit them, but things like taking their friends to hospital visits or appointments, doctor's appointments, helping people move. I mean, when I say move, they help them pack, they load up the truck, they unload the truck, they help them find independent living facilities. I mean, just unbelievable things these people do on their own. Not asked to do that, just do that on their own. And like I said, I found what our ministry members do. They're really bonded and become true friends. I mean, I could have never have asked for more, or neither could have Mike Hines. I mean, again, we just simple requirement: go out, make contact, keep them from being lonely. Well, that's simple, but the reality is they're human beings, and the seniors have so much wisdom to share with us, like you said about your grandparents, the things they can share with us. That's being missed by someone. When they're not being visited by someone or they're by themselves, someone is missing out. I mean, Frank DeMarco, who you just showed that picture, he would tell us stories about him being in the Navy. My father-in-law, 93 years old, about how his friends were washed off the bow of the deck during the storms when they didn't have any weather prediction ability back in that time during World War II. So things like that will never be passed on unless you talk to these people and gain from their wisdom.
Let's take a step back, bigger picture look. What is Senior Connection and what are Friends of Seniors? Those are two things that you've mentioned. And so what are those two organizations? How do they run? And is there a rhythm, like a calendar of life for these groups or such? What's the difference, or what is Senior Connection and Friends of Seniors?
Okay, Senior Connection is, again, our sister ministry. And a lot of our seniors that we get are recommended by people who are doing work sites like Mike Hines. Noticed that Eleanor, Janine's friend, could use a friend. So their basic mission is to go out into the community. And when I say community, we go to Lawrenceville, we go all over the city. It's currently, Mike Hines was running it when I became a member, but right now, Carol Horvatin and Bill Zatelli share the responsibility. They organize these work groups based on requests from seniors. And again, just basically people within the community, they don't have to be Catholic. If they need a job being done and they request our Senior Connection come do it, we do it. They go, Bill Zatelli, Carol Horvat organize the work teams, which I describe as a bunch of experts. You know, we have plumbers, painters, electricians, every type of concrete people that they just know how to do everything. I think Tom described in that article, I'm not a very handy guy, but these are great people to learn from and for your kids to learn from. You know, we did a job this summer where a young lady, she was 12 years old, volunteered with her mom and brother, learned how to put up gutter guards. We let her do it. You learn it by doing it. I never knew how to put up a gutter guard, but things like that. Some things like that, that's what Senior Connection does. Great things for people throughout the community that can't afford it or have the resources to do it themselves. Now
also with Senior Connection, do you have a certain rhythm of life of that? Is this every weekend you're going out? What's kind of the overall calendar of Senior Connection in case somebody's watching and thinking, well, I know somebody in need, or I actually do have talents similar to St. Joseph and be willing to offer them. And as you just saw, the website, which anybody could go on to be able to consult, or if there's any questions, please ask away. But go ahead, Steve. Describe a little bit about like when you typically will do this and what's the calendar like.
Okay, well, Senior Connection actually, I believe, goes 4 or 5 months during the summer months, taking a break during, I think, August only because it's so hot. But basically, you just go out in the morning, you meet. These work groups are organized based on the demand of what job needs to be done by the leaders that are organized through Bill Zatelli and Carol Horvatin. And then they go out and do different work projects throughout the city. Obviously, you can't meet every demand that every senior has, but they try to meet as many as they can. And the people, like I said, there are people that know what they're doing and they lead the groups. They make sure it's safe. They give safety briefings to make sure you do the job safely. You don't have to be an expert, but if you are an expert, they definitely want them too to join because they can help the other people do the job. I don't know if that explains it enough, but
it does. Yeah. I think I just want to give a picture for people. It's been great. I've seen and blessed, and we've done masses before you guys go out or just to be around. I think it was in October, November. It was one of the times that I was there, and they had the hot chocolate and stuff like that. And you were able to describe, I think there's about 6 or 7 projects. There's about 30 or so people and about 5 or 6 going to each place. And it's amazing that your team, what they do is they do all the prep work, making sure that the tools and the safety things are there, that the people where they're going to visit and all that is done. So it's a tremendous ministry. We do that on our mission trips as well. So I've always felt like, there's these weekend missions that you can do, and then there's the extended week-long missions. And I think that, as you say, it's life-changing to be able to just be there to help at the homes of some of our people and friends in our community that just don't have the resources.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the mission trips, because this summer they were canceled because of COVID, right? So a lot of kids joined Senior Connection on a couple of weekends and contributed to the Senior Connection group, which is wonderful having young people, because, and what I mentioned in one of those meetings is we need to recruit younger people, because guys like me are no spring chickens anymore. And some of this work can be physically demanding. It's not hard with gardening, and some of the days can be long. They typically don't go past 3 in the afternoon. And they, after mass, they usually have a mass in the morning before they go out and start around 9. So you're looking at about maybe 3 to 5 hours of work, whatever the work project happens to be, anywhere from gardening to building fences to anything you could imagine that needs to be done. One lady had a chairlift put in by Kathy Hiles, and her husband put a chairlift in for one of our seniors who was unable to get his wife upstairs, who had Alzheimer's. So they put a chair in that was donated by another one of our members. So again, charity comes from all different places, from the work you do, from the people that donate different things to the church. It's just amazing. And again, that was one of my major inspirations for becoming Catholic. The people I met during all these work projects for Senior Connection and in my own ministry, they said, these are wonderful people. I mean, I think I would want to be a Catholic.
Yeah.
So
it's true. It's part of our Catholic faith. Whatever you do to the least of my brothers, you do to me, says Jesus to us through Scripture. Now, talk a little bit about friends of seniors. So one thing is to do house rebuilding. Another is to connect with seniors through other means. What is that apostolate like, and what's the kind of rhythm of life there? And here you can see a little bit of a brochure there.
Yeah, that's actually, Janet Roberto sent me that. That's actually on the Great Grouping website, which talks about Senior Connection. It talks about Friends for Seniors on that particular website. But it's a great resource on the Great Grouping website for everything from funeral planning to Senior Connection to Friends for Seniors. But in a nutshell, what we do is we're trying to make a regular connection with the senior that may or may not be lonely. Some of our seniors have family members, but they just want somebody to talk to, a friend. And that's what we do. We call them once a week. And like you said, especially during the pandemic, there's so much isolation and loneliness right now, especially among the seniors. It's very hard to go out, don't know how to go out, don't know how to get immunized, which brings up another good point. Part of our ministry is not just seeing them and visiting them and calling them once a week. We provide them information. Like right now, a lot of seniors are perplexed about how to go about sign up for COVID. They don't have computers. They can't sign up. How do they find out information? Well, a couple of weeks ago, I got some information from the Heritage Valley and got a phone number, which I could actually share that.
You mean how to get the vaccine, not how to get COVID, right? The vaccine.
How to get, hopefully not get COVID, but get the vaccine so you don't get COVID.
Right.
But Heritage Valley has set up a phone line you could call, leave your number. I'll leave the number right now because there might be people that could benefit from this.
Sure, go ahead.
It's Heritage Valley Health Network, and you don't have to be a member of Heritage Valley, but it's 724-770-7555. Again, 724-770-7555. And it's an easy, simple way for a senior to call them, leave their name and number, and at least to put on a list. Right now, they're prioritizing 80 and older, which most of our seniors are. So a simple way for that type of thing. Not only do we provide friendship, companionship, but we provide counseling, recommendations. I guess what I'm saying is we kind of like network and try to provide information to our seniors that could be helpful. At Christmas, I sent out a package of brochures to our seniors, which has great resources. Again, a lot of our seniors are unaware of the resources that are available to them. There's one, a senior blue book for the greater Pittsburgh area, again, at the local YMCA, but they're all over the place. Life transitions, guiding your downsides. These are all things that were found in the resource guide. You know, senior centers for seniors to go to if they're lonely or how they can stay busy. Some of these services are free. They provide free rides. Here's another great
Steve, we're leaving up there the email for you. And so if somebody is interested in some of the information, would you be open to them sending you an email and you could tell them where that information is? Because I think that the resources and the experiences that our Senior Connection and Friends of Senior has is something so worth it for them to be in touch with you, especially if they have a concern for somebody in their friendship group or their family group. They could turn to you and to get some advice on where to angle some of those things. Now, talk about a little bit of your own experience. Have you had a chance lately to be able to talk to some of our seniors during this Corona time? I know, for example, my grandmother at the beginning of Corona time, we were very much concerned. She was turning 95, and we had to have the disappointment of not being able to celebrate her 95th birthday in person. And with our small family of 256, it just didn't seem prudent in April. So what have you heard, or what has been some of your experiences with some of the stories of our seniors during this Corona time?
Well, first of all, I keep track of every senior's birthday that's in our ministry, and I try to give them a phone call. I send them a card with a gift card from Giant Eagle. In the past, I would always take the volunteer and their senior friend out to lunch as a way to maintain a regular connection. Hey, there we are.
That looks like a good lunch. Did you pay?
Yes, I did, believe it. And his friend, Sam, which, again, this is a great way to connect throughout the year. It's obviously hard for me to see them every month. And now we're up to about 30 seniors that we see regularly. So that's my way of reaching out to them, telling my volunteers, thank you. But again, with COVID, since the pandemic, I'm unable to take them out to lunch. So what I've been doing is calling the seniors, sending them a gift card, tell them to buy themselves something special. And in addition to that, my volunteers or my ministry members are doing the same thing. They're sending them gifts. They're calling their friends regularly. That's the best gift you could have. The gift of conversation, the gift of a friend. And that's what they have. And that's what they're providing to these seniors. And believe me, they call them during Christmas, during holidays, which is, like you said, the most important, especially during the pandemic.
Steve, how do you build trust with our seniors? It seems like sometimes there's a lot of people out there trying to scam them, take advantage of perhaps their situation and things. What has been ways to, first of all, help our seniors be cautioned against those who are trying to scam them, but more importantly, how have you been able to build trust with them?
Well, like I said, I think most of our senior members, again, come from recommendations through Senior Connection or through reference of people that know about our program. So again, as far as answering that question goes, to build their confidence, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of scam. One of our seniors gave her Social Security number to somebody on the phone, and now they're taking her Social Security checks. So she had to sign up for food from the food bank at Good Samaritan. Another great service our great grouping provides. But to answer your question, to build up their confidence, I first call them, introduce myself on the phone, tell them what we're all about, maybe send them a brochure if they'd like to see it. And typically the request comes from them. So they're seeking friendship through like the Evangelion. We've had several ads in there. We've had people spread the word. There's a lot of more elderly people in the Ambridge area. So we're getting a lot more. We've got 5 seniors from them. Denise Farion, who ran the outreach ministry, it called over 1,000 organized calling 1,000 seniors. We've got at least 5 people from there. And then going back to your original question, yeah, some of them are a little bit leery. I mean, I've had to kind of I just called, check on them. There's no high pressure. I said, hey, when you're interested, one lady's husband was in the final stages of cancer. She said, I can't really spend the time talking to anybody right now, but she's interested. Ironically, her husband just passed away a couple of days ago, when I was calling her to check in on her. And sadly, her husband passed, but she said, yeah, please call me in a couple of weeks. And that's been going over a course of 6 months, where she really hasn't accepted anybody. I've given her names of people in the parish to make her more comfortable. Some seniors, they have no desire at all to be visited right now because of COVID, obviously, and you can understand that. But I said, well, if you just want somebody to talk to, it's funny, but you would think the women would not want it more than men. Some of the men that we have, seniors, they have granddaughters taken care of. They just want a buddy to talk to, right? I think guys are just as social as women are, that we just want a buddy to talk to. And that's what Jeff
I agree.
volunteers.
We've been blessed by your team to help us as priests, because really we still have permission to be able to go into some of the homes and things and be able to bring the Eucharist, to be able to pray with the men and women who live alone. And these last 8 or 9 months have just been amazing to be able to be some of the few people that get to visit our seniors. And you're so right. They just want a companion. They just want to be able to talk to somebody. They just want to laugh and share their stories. And so it is very special to see, hear the wisdom of our friends.
Well, again, I have to give you tribute for that too, because the seniors that do request communion in their homes, the padres have really stepped up to the plate, at risk of your own health, I'm afraid, but you're willing to do it, and you're willing to go out there and give the seniors what they need, the companionship, communion within their home, if that's their faith. And I really respect that. You're saying, how do we gain their trust? The padres, when they go out. I think Janet Roberta was trying to organize giving our brochures out, which we have Friends for Senior brochures, which describe our ministry right here.
Right, that's what we put up on the website. There it is. So
right, okay, that's it.
Both sides of that. So yeah, that's available. It's also, I think, on the website for anybody to check out. But you can always just call our office either in Ambridge or at Saints John and Paul and get connected. So if you know a senior, if somebody's watching us, has a senior out there, or somebody who would like to be connected to, what's the easiest way for them to get them registered or get them in the loop so that they get visited by us priests, or they get to the care of a phone call from you all?
Just call me or email me, and then I will respond as rapidly as possible. I try to find one of our volunteers that lives close to them, to make it convenient for both them and the senior, especially if we resume visits, hopefully soon. So I just kind of find out a little bit of information. I interview them a little bit on the phone. I try to find a volunteer that lives near them, and I try to match women with women, men with men. But recently I've had a gentleman that lost his wife a few years ago, and he's very lonely. And he misses that female conversation and companionship. He said, hey, if you have a senior lady who'd like to talk to me, I said, well, I'm not a dating service. But I understand that. Yeah, we all like female companionship, right? Yeah, okay. So
well, if they do ask for that, just tell them to pray a rosary. Mary's a great female companion. So, and she's available 24/7 without any Tinder or anything. So it's actually good. Now, what about people in our community that really feel called to be able to serve? Do you have any orientation, or would there be a way for them to consider for being a part of your team?
Yes, Just Carlo will provide them information. Again, not everyone can do this. You have to have a background check. You have to go on to Protecting God's Children. There's a website that Just Carlo can supply you, and it takes a few hours to go through. I had to do it when I went to Chambodi, but it's for the safety of the senior, and obviously understandable, and nowadays to protect everyone. So they have to take an online course, which can take anywhere 2 to 4 hours. And again, they can connect through Just Carlo. And then once that's completed, we have them sign a waiver, basically relieving the church of any liability. Again, that's understandable. And people say, oh, what if they sue me? I go, well, if my friend sues me, then he's not my friend. And I don't think that's never ever arisen. But again, I understand the reason for that. So we do have them sign a waiver, just basically releasing reliability to the church, but never had a situation arise, and hopefully never will. But
yeah, I just would encourage anybody who's watching to maybe pray and discern that of being able to take almost adopt a senior, so to speak, and every once in a while give a phone call to be able to be in touch with you and the team to pray for them would be great. So again, there's the website for more information on that and a way of connecting like that. Is there anything else within the senior ministry that you think is important for us to discuss before, if we see if there's any questions out there that we could respond to?
No, it's just like I said. My summary is that we have wonderful people, and I think Lori, your personal assistant, Lori Anderson, asked me if I had any wishes, and I don't know if you're going to ask this question in the end, but my wish is that there be no lonely people, and that's obviously not possible, but at least not have any lonely seniors out there. And if they are lonely, there is a resource available to answer your question. We are available to them. If they are lonely and would like a friend, please contact me or Chuck Sestini, but go through me, and then I will try to connect them with a volunteer. Same as if you want to be a volunteer, either email me or call me, and I'd be happy to try to make a connection with a friend. And believe me, that's the best gift you could give to a person, is just gift of conversation,
I agree. Yeah, it's such a blessing.
I have a stack of thank you notes, which I keep, and Christmas cards. They go to me, and I'm sure my members get them too. But for just the thought, and one lady phrased it perfectly. She said, just the conversation is so much appreciated. Just to know that someone cares, that means so much to them, And like you said, they have so much wisdom to share. That's being lost right now unless we go out and reach out to them and talk to them.
Yeah, and I appreciate you and all our team that are doing that, and all those viewers who are doing that with their own grandparents or their own community circles that are there. So I'm not sure if there's any questions there. So do you have one favorite moment with a senior friend?
I tell you, they're all great moments, but I'd say this one, the picture you had with Frank DeMarco and Chuck with me, we would try it. Now, Chuck went every time the Steelers played on Sunday.
Is Chuck in the man in the center there? Who's who there? Sorry.
Chuck Sestini is on the left with the glasses, and then Frank DeMarco, well, I shouldn't say this. Frank is in the middle. He's our friend, and then me on the right, facing the pitcher. But I just really enjoyed that time. He reminded me of my father-in-law. He was a Navy veteran. We would have during the Steelers games. Chuck would go all the time. I would try to attend occasionally with him, but just sharing the time, having a beer. He really enjoyed having a beer and a couple chicken wings. And he would say, "I don't deserve this." I go, "What do you mean you don't deserve this?" You don't deserve to what? To have friends? I mean, you're a wonderful person. We love spending time with you. Chuck Sestini's been wonderful. I mean, he sees Frank regularly, or was before he went into independent living or assisted living. And he sees another gentleman, Rich, whose wife just passed away from Alzheimer's. But Rich calls Chuck his handyman. He goes in there and he says, "Hey, my sink is clogged." "No, wrong program, but hey, I'm your friend. I'll come over and fix it." "Hey, Chuck, my light switch is broken." "Okay, I'll come fix it. I'm not a handyman." But those type of things. I mean, like I said, you couldn't ask them to do that, but they do. They just stand up. All my ministry members just stand up and plate, and they answer the call. Whatever their seniors want, they do it. And sometimes I say, "Hey, we're not a ride service, but if you want to, that's your option."
Exactly.
Right.
See if there's any other questions out there. So your dear friend Tom Rooney says, "Were you flying on 9/11? And if so, what was that like?"
Yes, I was. I was getting ready to take off out of the Pittsburgh International Airport going to Erie, Pennsylvania. Wow, long flight, right? It was a 30-minute flight to Erie. When we were taxiing out, the tower controller said, "We just heard," now at that time, nobody knew what was happening, that a small plane had run into the World Trade Center. Now, that was the first crash, right? And they thought it was just a little Cessna that got off course, which has actually happened in the past. Little plane ran into the Empire State Building many years ago. But that's what we initially thought. By the time we landed in Erie, It was like World War III had broken out. They had the entire airport closed. They wouldn't let anybody off the plane, on the plane. We were stuck there for several days and would not let us go home because they didn't know when we were going to have to leave. And I mean, we could have driven home in a couple hours, right? But we had to stay there. And just that situation of not knowing what's going to happen next, not knowing who's a terrorist, not knowing if, so they grounded all the flights. That was a good call during that time period. And yeah, it was just a very unnerving experience to be in that situation and be in an airplane knowing that it could happen to you. It could be hijacked any moment, right?
Yeah, I agree.
In the old days, our philosophy in the old days was give in to the hijackers' demands. Nowadays, you don't give in to their demands because you know what they're going to do, right? They're going to use your plane as a weapon. So, but
yeah, that's true. I was in Mexico City when that was going down, and I knew my dad was in New York at the time, so I was, frightened. But the strange thing for me is that you couldn't get any phone calls into the United States. It's as if the whole phone system was shut down. And being in Mexico, just hearing the news, and then all of a sudden they said there's a plane near Pittsburgh that's been hijacked, and I'm like, what in the world? Of all the cities in the United States, why would they go to Pittsburgh? And yeah, it was one of those days that you'll just never forget. And I remember in Mexico City thinking, my goodness, what's going on with our world? So, yeah, before we conclude, I just wanted to maybe throw a spontaneous question at you, because I just thought this was quite fascinating that this past weekend, and actually today, it's been an ongoing story, in the Vatican, Pope Francis has announced an official liturgical feast day for grandparents. And it's the first time that the Pope's ever done this, any Pope in the Church. And it's on July 25th, which is the feast of St. Joachim and St. Anne. And I just thought how we're speaking today about this, and now he's announcing that the Catholic Church is going to name a day like a liturgical day for grandparents. How fitting is that? Now, the U.S., you might know, has a National Day of Grandparents. This was declared by Jimmy Carter in 1978, and it's the first Sunday after Labor Day. So it's not to be confused with that. But the liturgical feast day, and this is what the Pope said. He says it's important for grandparents to meet their grandchildren and for grandchildren to meet their grandparents, because as the prophet Joel says, grandparents are a blessing. We will help dream and desires for young people to take strength from grandparents will go forward and prophesy, he said. And so, I don't know, you have any thoughts? What should we do on Grandparents' Day this year, July 25th? Big party, or what do you suggest?
I don't know, but that's wonderful. And like you said, it's so perfect timing. But let me just say one last thing, because to summarize, I never did summarize how I became Catholic. And just as a tribute to Father Mac and Sister Annie when they were getting ready to leave, in tribute to the people who run Senior Connection, who were my ministry members, the people from Chimbote, all the Catholics I encountered over the years, they were my reason for becoming Catholic. And my friend said, why would you become a Catholic in this time of darkness? I said, because of the light that all these people put out. They are the light in the darkness. They do represent Jesus Christ. And they were my motivation for becoming Catholic. And I went through RCI, and during one of his final masses, Father Mac confirmed me. I'm very proud of.
Yeah, it's true.
I'll tell you what, I've not been disappointed since. All the wonderful people, Karen Walker, Rachel Verbanek, Jenna Roberto, Betsy Zakel, all the people that work for you in the church and in the great grouping, Cindy DeShane, that do the work in the food bank, Rose Filipponi, who we talked about earlier, and my wife, who do cooking in the kitchen for the food bank. They are my inspiration. They are the light, and they are what makes your church the house of God. And of course, under your leadership of the Padres, I give you total credit also. So thank you for that.
No, it's great. And I think you're right. It is a litany of thanksgiving for all these instruments of God's grace that have placed.
Oh, my wife. Sorry. Don't let me forget my wife.
No, you've mentioned your wife. I'm not saying you shouldn't, and it's good that you go back there to mention her. But
she's my baby.
I know. It's so beautiful. Quick programming note. Next Tuesday, February 9th, we're going to be meeting with another great grouping member, Michael Deem, on ethical questions of life, talking about the coronavirus vaccine, abortion, end-of-life issues, in vitro fertilization. So don't miss next February 9th at 2 o'clock with Michael Deem, who's an ethicist at Duquesne. Well, Steve, I can't appreciate enough you coming on, and most importantly, I hope that everybody watching will say a very special prayer today for all of those who are our elderly, our seniors, that the wisdom and the guidance that they've blessed us with, we can reciprocate by lives of holiness, knowing that the goal of life is get to heaven, and Jesus Christ is the way. And so I just will impart my blessing. The Lord be with you and with your spirit. May Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
St. Joachim and St. Anne, pray for us. Steve, thank you so much.